everybody. My name is AlexisFlesey, for those of you that don't already know me. And today I'm going to tell you about this project that I've been working on for a long couple of months now. It's called the Sleepwalk Museum. So my project kind of started with this idea of connecting design and science. So is design science, and how? Why are physiology and psychology so important to interior design, and how can the interior environment actually affect people? And that's kind of what I focused on to start this project. So the interior environment actually does affect productivity in people, people's overall mood just being in a space. And then the interior environment can also help or hurt physical healing. So you're probably wondering, how does the interior environment actually affect these things in humans? So there were two things that I focused on primarily for my project, one of them being color. So I'll kind of go through each color with you. We'll start with these more common colors. Pink is very soothing. It also decreases your pulse, actually. Purple is kind of the same, but it's a little more meditative, so it actually produces delta brainwaves. Blue is a more motivating color than these two, pink and purple, but it does actually suppress melatonin in the brain, and it's a lot related to the circadian rhythm and how we interpret light in terms of being awake or being asleep. Green, on the other hand, is very stimulating. It also produces a lot of healing effects in the interior environment. And then yellow is a stimulating color. It raises your pulse, actually. It's a stimulant for your appetite. And red is as well. Red is a very stimulating color, a little more than yellow on there, and also raises your pulse and your perspiration. The second element that I focused on was lighting. So different levels of lighting can actually affect how your body responds to the environment. So bright light, for example, 100% would be awakening. It's actually used to promote, it combats depression. So bright light therapies are often used in disorders like seasonal depression and things of that nature. Dim lighting produces a more meditative state, so it actually helps your body prepare for sleep. And then no light has a really interesting psychological effect on us, and it actually creates a deprivation effect, so that our kind of senses are a little bit deprived, and it causes a lot of psychological effects. So, mending the gap between these two, interior design can and should be used to heal the body and the mind. I don't believe that an interior space should ever negatively affect a user, and I think that as interior designers, we can really focus on how to not only promote healing, but provide healing in an interior space. So subtle things like color and light can actually really, really help people in spaces. So this is kind of going into the more therapeutic side of interior design. So like I said, we shouldn't only promote healing, we should provide healing to our people. You can provide these therapeutic experiences, and a lot of spaces actually do right now. So I don't know if you've ever, how many of you have actually been in like an office space or a spa space that uses natural lighting as a healing element, or a lot of green or plants of some sort? You guys seen that in some of those spaces? So it's being a little bit explored right now, but I think that we could take this to the next level. Like, I believe that interior spaces actually have the ability to mess with, for lack of a better term, chemicals within our brains and actually produce certain responses. So, for instance, sleep deprivation. How many of us have ever been really tired and not gotten enough sleep? Exactly. So these are kind of the symptoms of sleep deprivation. It causes irritability, an inability to concentrate, increased appetite. As a student, sleep deprivation is a huge problem. And how cool would it be if you could just go somewhere and actually walk through a space that was enjoyable and therapeutic at the same time, and maybe help combat some of these symptoms of sleep deprivation. That's kind of where I was going in direction with my project. So, how do we introduce this information to the public without boring them? How do we get people to come? How do you tell people this will actually help you psychologically and be a good experience for you? We give the people what they want. What do they want? Social leisure, also known as doing fun things with other people. So this is one of the main things that people in our society do for free time. They like to hang out with other people. So what do we need? A space to hang out. Obviously, you gotta have somewhere to go. And for the purpose of my project, that space needs to be abstract, needs to be immersive for these people, and it needs to have a little bit of a psychological aspect. Maybe that they don't realize, but will definitely have an effect on them. So I've come up with the Sleepwalk Museum, which is a fun and immersive way to introduce people to this idea that lighting and color can actually really affect them psychologically and kind of get them to understand the power behind interior designs. So I'll kind of walk you through the floor plan of the first story. This is the main entertainment space, so this is more catering to people that are hanging out and waiting to go through my installation. The primary spaces in here are going to be the reception area. That's the main entrance there, and then it opens up into the reception. And then the lounge and bar area, and then the restrooms, which are on the left there, which are ADA accessible. My entire space, I'll mention now, is ADA accessible. So that was a big part of my design. I wanted everybody to be able to come and enjoy this and not feel differently depending on their ability. And then just some secondary spaces. We have like an admin office on the side there, little industrial kitchen, and then a storage space, and that is a waiting space for people that are about to go through the installation. So you can kind of see right here is the first elevator, and that's what takes you up to the second story here, which serves as my installation space. So I designed this space with the sleep cycle in mind. Like I talked about sleep deprivation, I really wanted to explore how lighting and color could affect human psychology and physiology, and how I could create like a walkthrough installation space that could actually trigger the same type of reactions as a typical sleep cycle would. So my primary spaces are based on the 4 stages of the human sleep cycle. This one being the first, which is falling asleep. This would be the second, and this is like a light sleep. So not quite when you're in deep sleep yet, but getting there. And then this space is the very deep sleep. And this last space here is for REM sleep, which is your dreaming aspect of sleeping. And then just some secondary spaces here. This is kind of how you wake up in my space, and that dark box there is a second elevator that takes you back down to the first story once you're done completing the installation. Just some electrical control spaces, storage and maintenance, all that good stuff. And then this would be egress and some little panic hallways, just in case people were not feeling it. All right, so now we will go through the actual renderings of my spaces up close and personal. I'll start with the reception area here. So this is the first picture you saw. This is like the reception desk area. This is a little booth for receiving headphones. Acoustical privacy was a huge thing for me in this, just to keep people in the same state of mind. So I wanted to have a little headphone action there. This is just a seating area for people that are waiting to go into the installation. And then this glass here is what separates the lounge and the bar from the reception area. And just another view there of kind of, this is the entry elevator. This would be where you would go to the restrooms. And just a lot of really cool, funky seating. I really wanted this first level to still fit with my design and be cohesive. So So I wanted to keep it very fun, very abstract, very colorful, kind of the same way that my whole installation is designed. Next, we will go into the lounge space here. So this is kind of looking into the reception area from the back of the lounge, kind of where the bar would be. So I designed these little booths here, very funky way to create large seating areas, and I really wanted it to cater to a lot of people wanting to just hang out and have a good time and talk about what they saw upstairs. So a lot of self-illuminating spaces here, a little movie projection. Yeah. Moving on to upstairs. Lights, please. It's going to get real dark in here, sorry guys. Just for dramatic effect. All right, so the first stage is falling asleep, like I said. So using the psychology of lighting and color, I created this illusion of a narrowing archway, kind of similarly to how the brain narrows as you're falling asleep. And I used a lot of purples and blues just to kind of create that in-between of being awake and then also creating these delta brain waves that occur when you're falling asleep. And all of these are self-illuminating, so it is like walking through a tunnel of light. Moving on to my next space here. This is a Gansfield effect, and a Gansfield effect kind of produces a deprivation visually. So like I spoke about a little bit, no light, or in this case a flood of the same color of light, actually creates a visual deprivation effect, and that induces the brain to kind of create a rhythm of brain waves, if you will. The same way that you actually feel when you're in light sleep, so stage 2. So this entire space when you walk in is the same color throughout, and realistically, just for rendering purposes, you can kind of see the difference, but realistically, each space here is light. So the floor, the ceiling, all the walls are just emitting this kind of glow, and this color is actually used psychologically to calm people down. It's used a lot in hospitals and actually prisons in order to reduce kind of stress and aggravation in people. So I really wanted this space to just feel very calming, but also very overwhelming in a way, just to create that visual deprivation. Moving on here, we'll go to this infinity room that represents deep sleep. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with infinity rooms, but it's an entire mirrored installation. So the floor, the walls, and the ceiling are all this black mirror. And there's actually only 20 of these LED light strips in the space, like realistically on the walls. So this creates this very infinite space and kind of obliterates space and time, a lot like how you would be in the third stage of sleep, which is the really, really deep sleep. So not a lot of outside stimulants here, very, very absent-minded, I guess, if you will, while you're in the third stage of sleep. Moving on to the fourth, kind of I created 4 rooms to represent the fourth stage of sleep. And I wanted these spaces to be primary colors primarily, because those are some of the first colors that we actually recognize as humans, like coming into the world as babies. So these are very innate in our human science. So each space, they're kind of all connected, as you can see by this little I. REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. So I gave a little architectural detail there, but they're all connected. So you could actually go from this space into this general space and into each room separately and kind of go along as you would like. I wanted these to feel very flooded with these colors, but also have some level of like familiarity to them. So I used a lot of furniture that you might see in real life that kind of connects you to the dreaming aspect of these spaces. So kind of reality, kind of not. And I intended these spaces for people to just hang out and just absorb everything. altogether, interior design is therapy, and I think this needs to be way more emphasized. It really affects people, the things that you use in your space, whether you intend for it to or not. And I think that this is something that as interior designers, it's part of our responsibility to create a space where people can get what they need while they're in the space and not just be there to be there. I think this goes for any of interiors, like any interior spaces, not just something fun to show it off to people, but in offices, hospitals, every interior space should use this concept. And that is all. Haley?
I like the deprivation at the end.
Yeah.
Anybody thoughts?
Thank you.
Yeah, your entire project is beautiful. I love the renderings. It's crazy how you were just in credit class for this, and then like you were able to do all that. But it's beautiful. I love the lighting too. It seems like you got it exactly how you wanted it to. But it's beautiful. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah,
I just love how much science you put into it, which I think it really shows in how you move your spaces. I did have a question. So you said that like your walls like illuminate. So like, how does that work?
So they're typical gypsum walls, and then they actually have LED panels, like really large square panels that go all along the wall. They're like Philips tunable panels, so you can pick the color temperature that you want and all of that good stuff. And then they have a LumiCore, like kind of see-through. It's called Phantom, but it's a little bit see-through, and it allows for just a glow. It creates like a really even glow on the space, so that is applied over the lighting panels as kind of like a partition.
Did you take Revit this semester?
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Thank you. What's up?
I felt like I was experiencing like the effects of the colors as I was watching it. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
All right, faculty.
I think there's a lot of great stuff in what you presented. I think the sequence, the argument. The one thing that I would recommend is when you were presenting those theories specifically about color and light, did you give a source? Like whose color theory were you sharing with us?
Newton's.
Okay.
OG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think, but even when you went through the color theory, like yellow does this, red does, like, because there's so many theories out there to sort of ground or to put a.
So I kind of I did a whole bunch of research here and kind of took from, honestly, chromotherapy in general, which was based on Newton science, but it's been used therapeutically for decades since then. So I kind of took a whole bunch of studies from that and just accumulated my information that way. So my sources were very vast on that.
Good. I think just giving a nod to them in a presentation helps the audience understand, what because whenever you have a discipline, you have different camps within the discipline, so it just sort of establishes your position. The other thing that I would say is I think I like the way you led into where the design concept came from. How do you pair these things? And then you really give us a great fun space that I think is on par with what's happening in a lot of museum design right now. Like this is the idea of those infinity rooms, which have been kind of all over the country. Like very recently, there's been a couple installations at the Phoenix Contemporary or Scottsdale. Scottsdale, and certainly in New York, Chicago, LA. And it's fun because it's this trend that really began in the 70s that's having a retro, which is why I thought your lounge and sort of retro hyper-color was also on design trend points right now, which is kind of fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sherry's just shaking her head.
I was in light sleep, just like her. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I could feel the effect as you were talking and watching the colors. So, interesting.
It was effective, yay.
I just think it was super fun when you did your very initial, the midterm presentation, because you were all about the second floor. And where you took it from that to this is absolutely phenomenal. And because again, you were all about the study and the science behind all this, and then it just wasn't going to happen up in that space. I mean, that's where somebody would experience it. But then what you did is you took that and applied it into interior design in a lounge and, in a place for us to hang out and experience it in a more public sense versus just being a museum that was really theory and like theory and how you could affect it. And it's like, okay, well then now we get to go have fun and live in it. And your execution of those two fields was really spot on. I mean, your renderings are, again, your renderings are nuts. I gotta say, it's fantastic to see. But you're obviously, again, well scienced. You're well studied in not only the material but the science behind it. So very, very professionally done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great presentation. I thought you did a fabulous job. Great infographics and just all the graphics that you used I thought were put together really well to support what you were saying. I'm curious as to how people will be going through this space. If it's meant to be, so this experience, can they backtrack? Can they go back to spaces? How are people going to be moving throughout it? It is self-led for the most part. However, you are like escorted up there in the elevator and kind of on my first slip. I'm going to go back to that, I'm sorry. So when you before you go into the elevator here, this space right here is kind of where you're debriefed about the situation. So what to do, where to go, what not to do, all that good stuff. Then once you get upstairs, you aren't intended to go backwards necessarily, but there are doors if you want to leave the installation. You can totally do that. And I intended for employees to kind of be behind the scenes there, but still able to be reached if they needed to be. And then the second elevator to go down is actually you can just leave yourself. So you can spend, with the acoustics, I kind of had the idea that the music playing on the headphones would kind of lead people through the spaces and how long it should really take. But I intended for this to take up to an hour if people wanted to hang out up there. But you can leave the installation whenever you'd like. So you're not stuck up there. And smaller groups would be let up at one time. It's not free for all. Awesome. And then you had a kitchen. Is that for employees or? It's just for the lounge and restaurant, just for little bites to eat and stuff. I just had a little industrial kitchen there just to serve for appetizers and little snacks and with the bar. Perfect. Yes. Steve.
So I'm assuming with the bar that it's not really for children, but in terms of when families do come through, how are you going to make sure safety of the children?
I should definitely mention that this is an 18 and above situation. Just because of the liability psychologically and a lot of the effects that take place aren't super child friendly. I mean, they might be, but
I just didn't know.
Just as a general safety measure, I decided to design this space with strictly adults in mind. So I don't want to, mess with the kids.
I think maybe the reason why they thought maybe it would have kids is you had one perspective that had a child in it.
Yeah.
So if you truly want it that way, don't put the child in.
And that was after it was all said and done.
No worries. It aided the scale. I could see how you designed your PowerPoint to kind of go with the science that you found, so good job on that. I totally picked up on all the psychological things that you did there. And you're a dynamic speaker. Your voice inflection is really great. It's really easy to listen to. You bring it high when it needs to, and you bring it low when it needs to. So, Alexis, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Proud Mama Bear.